Kurds are seen as the world's largest ethnic group without a home country of their own. Their fight for independence and autonomy has lasted for more than a century and continues today. So who exactly are the Kurds, and how does their pursuit of autonomy play into the conflicts of the Middle East? The Kurdish population totals around 30 to 40 million people worldwide. They're of Indo-European descent and are one of the indigenous peoples of the Mesopotamian plains and highlands. The majority of Kurds, almost half to be exact, live in Turkey, followed by Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Germany. They share cultural ties and language dialects. The majority are Sunni Muslims, but some also adhere to other faiths. In the early 20th century, many Kurds started making calls for the creation of a homeland, which is often dubbed Kurdistan. After World War I, Western states had originally promised the Kurds their own country, but it never materialized. When the Ottoman Empire was defeated and the modern borders of Turkey were set in 1923, there was no provision for an independent Kurdish state. Since then, Kurds have had an unprotected minority status in the countries they live in, and their attempts to set up an independent state have repeatedly been quashed. Let's look more closely at 3 examples. The Kurds have seen a long history of violent oppression in Iraq, where they waged insurgency throughout the 20th century. Baghdad retaliated often. In 1988, Saddam Hussein's government gassed thousands of Kurds to death in the city of Halabja. Later, the government slaughtered tens of thousands more Kurds through the end of the First Gulf War, when they tried to organize an independent state. Kurds eventually established fragile semi-autonomy in Iraq's north, where they have military and administrative control. The autonomy was only recognized after the fall of Saddam Hussein, and disputed areas remain through the present. In Turkey, Kurds have faced severe government repression for decades, partly in response to the Kurdish separatist movement. Kurds make up 15 to 20% of the population, but often haven't had the same civil rights as Turks. Kurds have faced forced resettlement, as well as denial of their identity and customs. Until 1991, Turkey referred to Kurds as Mountain Turks, and words like Kurds, Kurdistan, or Kurdish were officially banned by the government. Many people who spoke, published, or sang in Kurdish were arrested and imprisoned. Turkey justified a tough stance against Kurdish identity as necessary due to armed uprisings from Kurds seeking independence. The Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, fought for Kurdish autonomy and an independent state within Turkey for several decades. Turkey considers it a terrorist group and blames it for the deaths of thousands of civilians and soldiers. Kurds are Syria's largest ethnic minority, and their history in the country has also been interwoven with government suppression and discrimination. They have been denied basic rights like citizenship and owning land. Here too, Kurds have long sought autonomy. Their involvement in the Syrian war highlighted their quest for independence again, so let's take a look at how it all unfolded. After peaceful Arab Spring protests in Syria in 2011 turned into a civil war, the country's Kurdish groups started getting involved as well. Eventually, the conflict in Syria was divided between four sides: President Assad's regime forces, anti-government rebels, ISIS, and the Kurds. The sides drew foreign backing, turning the conflict into a proxy war for international powers. Kurdish fighters were trained and supported by the US, who wanted to stop the spread of ISIS jihadists in the region. And indeed, Kurds were crucial in driving ISIS out of northeastern Syria, while the local Kurdish militia started governing the land it captured. Eventually, this meant Kurdish militia were controlling about a quarter of the Syrian landmass, including most of the border region with Turkey. Similarly to Kurds in Iraq, Syrian Kurds established their own government and had military and administrative control. It brought independence within grasp for the Syrian minority. That changed rapidly in October, when Washington said it was withdrawing the Kurds' allies, US troops, from Syria. It paved the way for Turkey to launch an assault against Kurdish forces in northern Syria. The Kurds determined the best hope for surviving Turkey's assault was to let President Assad's troops back into the region, effectively forfeiting their semi-autonomy. Turkey has long feared Kurdish autonomy in Syria could fuel the separatist movement in Turkey, where the majority of Kurds live. Many see Turkey's move as a way to stifle Kurdish calls for independence. As things stand, the Kurds remain without a country of their own, often living in a legal gray zone or deprived of fundamental rights.